A very warm good evening to all of you who have joined over here, dignitaries on the frame, my colleagues who have joined the attendee link, and all the student community. It's my honor and a privilege to welcome all of you. I hope you and all your families are doing well. My name is Dr. Asha and I come from L&T, and I have the privilege of hosting all of you for today's function. I'm going to be the master of the ceremony, so please bear with me. On behalf of the entire academic community, I welcome you to the inaugural function for the first Dr. Pritam Singh Memorial Conference on Architecturing the Future of Business Leadership, Governance and Technology, which is celebrating the legacy of the great renowned Dr. Pritam Singh. Dr. Singh, as we all used to lovingly call him, played an unmatched role in shaping the management education and corporate management space in India. His insights and knowledge, his undying love for leadership development, and his contribution to one and all of us will be remembered time and beyond. Personally, as a colleague working with him in IMI, I truly was benefited with his tutelage. I fondly remember that he always used to say that we should all be knowledge samurais, having the shields of Bhagavad Gita in one hand and the knowledge of PhD in another hand, rather than being knowledge coolies. He would fervently quote Bhagavad Gita at the drop of the hat, and I've never seen any academician doing that, unlike him. I think this conference is an attempt to continue his legacy of bringing together thought leaders, distinguished professionals like you, and young minds of the nation to reinvent architecture of our nation. So without any further ado, let me invite Professor Asha Bhandarker to propose the welcome address. Asha ma'am, as we all lovingly call her, is a distinguished professor of OB at IMI, and she is the director of the conference and also a member of the Pritam Singh Foundation. Ma'am has a rich experience in teaching, training, academics, and consulting for over the past 30 years. She has penned more than 8 books and written numerous national and international papers of repute. She is an authority in herself on leadership. Before joining IMI, ma'am was with MDI and holding a lot of eminent positions. Without any further ado, I invite Professor Asha Bhandarker to welcome all the dignitaries. Ma'am, over to you.
Good evening. Thank you all. Thank you, Asha, for this warm introduction. It's such a privilege, it's such a pleasure to welcome everybody, my distinguished guests, our respected chief guest, our host of this conference, Professor Dr. Raj Kumar, our patron, Mr. Simon, Dr. Simon Mercado, Mr. Mohapatra, and our dignitaries from the foundation, other distinguished guests, fellow colleagues and faculty, and my dear students. I will not take too much time. I just want to say a few words. It's a great moment personally, and numerous people have benefited from Dr. Pritam Singh's wisdom, and numerous organizations have benefited from his guidance, and inspired by what he stood for. I think we have put together this conference to honor his memory, actually, because 19th happens to be Dr. Pritam Singh's birthday, and this is how we are celebrating it, by doing what he loved best, that is creation of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge, because he stood like a bridge between knowledge and practice. And which is why, if you see the conference details, there is something for those who are researchers, there is something for students, and there is something for practitioners. And the other thing which he was known for is bridging these gaps across. You know, he didn't believe in silos, so he brought domains together, people across domains together, which is why, if you look at this conference, that's what we have done or endeavored to do. We have brought in, knowledge from practice, which you will see in the next couple of days, where we have eminent and senior practitioners from the industry speaking. And we also have distinguished faculty members making paper presentations, as well as being part of these panels. And I warmly welcome all of you. I think it's going to be a very exciting thing. And the reason why I say it's exciting is because we are doing something which is not generally done. This is extremely unusual to bridge this gap, and we are simply following in the footsteps of Dr. Pritam Singh. Thank you very much. Great that you could all join us, and look forward to the session. Thank you.
I now invite P. Dwarakanath sir, who is the president of the Pritam Singh Foundation and who is also the former chairman of GSK Consumer Healthcare Limited. What should I tell about him? Dwarka sir is like an encyclopedia of all things HR. We always learn from him, has a track record of more than 50 years of experience in the industry. Under his leadership and vision, GSK innumerable times won the award of Best Employer for several years. He chairs many positions in different professional bodies like NHRD and many other. And he is one person you always go to when you're stuck with something in HR and organizational development. So, Dr. Sir, I request you to share the opening remarks with all the dignitaries present here.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. At the outset, Dr. Asha, thank you very much for a kind introduction. At the outset, I thank everyone for joining us today at the inaugural session of the first PRISM 2021 conference. My special thanks to Dr. Professor D.P. Singh, Chairman UGC, for joining us today despite his extremely busy schedule. Thank you very much, sir. Our sincere thanks to Dr. Raj Kumar for his valuable contribution, both for him and his team, who has been sponsoring this along with ESCP Business School, London, and Professor Simon Mercado also will be joining this session. And also to the other two patrons, Mr. Raj Kiran Rai and Mr. Ranjan Kumar Mohapatra, for kindly consenting to be the add value to this conference as a patrons. Dr. Asha Bhandarker has already shared the contours of the conference, and I would not go into the details of the same. I would rather like to take this opportunity to touch upon the genesis of this conference and Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation especially. As the president of the Pritam Singh Foundation, Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, I think it won't be wrong to say that Dr. Pritam Singh touched countless lives across industry and academia, both in India and abroad, and spent his life tirelessly working towards taking organization to the next orbit. I have a long association personally with him, and he has been my mentor and guru for many years. His entire life epitomized Karma Yogi spirit, and he was Ajat Satru. After the unfortunate incident on June 3rd last year, the friends and well-wishers of Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation came together and discussed about carrying on with his legacy teachings, all of which are extremely relevant in the present times. This is how Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation came into shape, which is registered trust, and Dr. Chaturvedi ji is the management trustee, and the other trustees are Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui, Dr. B.M. Maitri, Dr. Asha Bhandarker, and myself. In addition, we have Dr. Subir Verma, Dr. Sanjay Srivastav, Mr. Dhananjay Singh, and Dr. Subrat Kumar are the core committee members who are supporting this foundation. Just for the benefit of everyone, just to recall, the vision of the foundation is developing leadership and building institutions rooted in ethical and human values. I would like to emphasize again, developing leadership and building institutions rooted in ethical and human values. And the four mission statements exemplifying these are: build a body of knowledge and facilitate management practices based on integration of Indian ethos with global wisdom. This is one of the focal points, and he emphasized it a lot during his teachings by Dr. Pritam Singh. Work with academia and management schools to build contemporary content, capabilities, and change aligned to the new business order. I have 50 years of corporate experience. I have never seen any other management thinker, guru, teacher, professor who has tried to, as Dr. Asha Bhandarker said very rightly, try to bridge that relationship between the industry and academia, and also with the regulators as well as the policymakers. Work with corporates to facilitate leadership development with focus on ethical and human values, governance, and sustainability. Recognize and motivate excellence in research, institution building, and leadership. These are the 4 pillars on which the foundation has been formed. It is no mere coincidence, no more coincidence. The theme of PRISM largely echoes these statements. I also take this opportunity to share with you, Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation has been taking baby steps, and I thank many of you present here for your support, without which the journey would not have been possible. This is a journey which will continue. We have just made the baby steps, as I said. I'm happy to share that AICTE has instituted Dr. Pritam Singh Award for Management Faculty and Leaders, and also thank Dr. DP Singh Ji, who is the chief guest today, for his kind support and advice regarding chair professorship in the name of Dr. Pritam Singh. Sir, I am sure that under your leadership and guidance, that will soon be a reality. We have also conducted 4 roundtables so far in last 1 year, including the book launch of Dr. Pritam Singh, which was co-authored along with Dr. Asha Bhandarker and Professor Subir Verma, role of boards, building sustainable advantage. So the focus, as I said, the governance, leadership, and technology. I also take this opportunity to also make a larger request. This is from the Pritam Singh Foundation. PRISM conference is just a beginning for the foundation. This is pure voluntary effort, and we need support of each one to take this movement to the masses. I must reiterate that some of you have been a great support, but we need more of like-minded leaders to transform the vision of Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation into reality. With these words, I would like to thank once again all of you, and especially thanks to OP Jindal Global University and ESCP London and other patrons and sponsors. And I wish that you will enjoy the conference in next 2 days. Thank you.
Moving on, it's my privilege to invite our host and patron, Professor C. Raj Kumar, Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University, to share his patron's address. Professor Raj Kumar needs no introduction, but still I'm requested, I'm required to say a few words, sir, so please bear with me. Professor Kumar is an accomplished legal scholar and works in the field of human rights and development, comparative constitutional law, terrorism, national security, corruption, governance, law and disaster management, and legal education.
Thank you, Dr. Nokadia. That's good enough. Thank you so much.
Right. So over to you, sir. We are seriously waiting to hear you, and thank you so much for your support to the conference. Over to
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Nokadia. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished chief guest of this conference, Professor Dr. DP Singh, the chairman of the University Grants Commission. On behalf of the Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, ESCP Business School, the Jindal School of Banking and Finance, and the OP Jindal Global University, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, and of course, in particular to our chief guest. I would like to recognize the presence and extend my heartiest greetings and deep appreciation to Professor Dr. Asha Bhandarker, Dr. Dwarakanath Patnam, Mr. Ranjan Mohapatra, Professor Chaturvedi, and also Professor Dr. Simon Mercado. Today is a very special day as we mark the beginning of an extraordinary initiative that the Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation has promoted. We are starting with this first Pritam Singh Memorial Conference on the theme, Architecting the Future of Business, Leadership, Governance, and Technology. Of course, the reason I find this as a very special occasion is that at a time when most conferences or most social other forms of intellectual engagements largely focus with people who are present, here we are also celebrating somebody who has left an indelible impression on the minds and hearts of numerous generations of people who he has inspired and shaped their lives. Dr. Pritam Singh was one such person. I, of course, came into his life, or rather he came into his life, my life, much later, but there are other distinguished people in this forum who have had opportunities to spend a lot more time with him and understand him and appreciate his extraordinary contribution. There are numerous areas in which his contributions has been truly remarkable. He was a great teacher, a prolific researcher, a true institutional reformer, somebody who believed in institutional transformation, and somebody who deeply promoted humanistic leadership. So in many ways, Dr. Pritam Singh epitomizes a very interesting concept that I've had the privilege to understand a bit. It's something known as Ubuntu, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Ubuntu because when I think about Dr. Pritam Singh, I can only say that he epitomizes the concept of Ubuntu. Now, what is Ubuntu? Well, Ubuntu essentially means I am what I am because of who we all are. The word Ubuntu has its origins in one of the Bantu dialects of Africa. It's a traditional African philosophy that provides us an understanding of ourselves in relation with the world at large. According to Ubuntu, and I quote, there exists a common bond between us all, and it is through this bond, through our interaction with our fellow human beings, that we discover our own human qualities. Or as the Zulus would say, that a person is a person through other persons. We affirm our humanity when we acknowledge that of others. The South African Nobel laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu beautifully summed up the concept of Ubuntu, and I will quickly quote it because that's exactly what Dr. Pritam Singh was. And this is the quote: "It is the essence of being human. It speaks of the fact that my humanity is caught up and is inextricably bound up in yours. I am human because I belong." It speaks about wholeness. It speaks about compassion. A person with Ubuntu is welcoming, hospitable, warm, and generous, willing to share. Such people are open and available to others, willing to be vulnerable, affirming of others, do not feel threatened that others are able and good, for they have a proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that they belong in a greater whole. They know that they are diminished when others are humiliated, diminished when others are oppressed, diminished when others are treated as if they were less than who they are. The quality of Ubuntu gives people resilience, enabling them to survive and emerge still human despite all efforts to dehumanize them, unquote. I wanted to bring this to your attention because such is the extraordinary humanistic approach that Dr. Pritam Singh had, and he influenced generations of students, faculty members, working professionals, industry experts, and leaders, and his connect to the world at large inspired all of us to come together to create the foundation, but also do this conference as well. As it was mentioned early on, this is a beginning. We've been able to bring together a number of individuals and institutions as a part of this effort, and I'm grateful to each one of them for sharing their time. But in particular, I want to thank the founding leaders of the Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, many of whom are speaking here, because their work and their contribution is not only tireless, but also deeply inspiring, for they are prepared to celebrate the life of an extraordinary human being who is no more, and in that process, celebrate that life and indeed inspire others who are present here. I'm also grateful to all the speakers who will be speaking during the next 3 days of the conference, and I would like to extend my heartiest greetings and wishes. In particular, I want to thank several of my colleagues who have been leading this effort: Professor Dr. Ashish Bharadwaj, the Dean of the Jindal School of Banking and Finance, Mr. Abhinav Madan, who's a director in my office, both of whom spent significant amount of time along with the leaders of the Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation to put this conference together. And I wish this conference every success. Part of this conference is going to be physical too, but we will indeed look forward to the next edition of the conference when we can all meet together in person. Thank you and best wishes.
Moving on, let me now invite Professor Simon Mercado. He is also a patron, and he is Executive Vice President, Director General, Adjoint Dean for Executive Education, Corporate and External Relations at ESCP. Professor Simon is a campus dean for ESCP Business School, London, a member of ESCP's European Executive Committee. Professor Mercado is responsible for the strategic development of ESCP's London School and directs its senior management team. He also acts as a managing director for the school's corporate service board, responsible for executive education provision to higher recognition clients, including LVMH, and leading multinational business firms. ESCP is Europe's number 12 ranked business school. Between 2011 and 2015, Professor Simon has served as Associate Deputy Dean at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent University, and he has written many papers. Welcome, Professor Simon. Over to you.
Asha, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And it's a good evening to the greater majority of you. I'm joining you actually in the middle of my afternoon here in Paris. You were kind enough to mention my history at ESCP in London. Well, in the last few months, I've actually moved to a different position at the school as Executive Vice President here on our Paris campus. And it's from Paris and this rather splendid bedecked boardroom, our Salle des Arts at Republique. It's from there that I happily speak with you all this afternoon. And may I say immediately, what a great privilege it is to join you, friends new and old. I was fascinated to listen to the president of the Pritam Singh Foundation and to Professor Raj Kumar. And gentlemen, you've said many of the things that I would like to say on behalf of ESCP Business School as a friend and patron of the Dr. Pritam Singh Memorial Foundation and Conference. It's a great honor for ESCP Business School to take its place alongside the foundation, alongside the Jindal School of Banking and Finance, and alongside OP Jindal Global University as sponsors and patrons of this event. And I know so many other organizations are an important part, both of the foundation's work and of this exciting conference program. I'm only sorry I can be but a brief part of this event, but I'm very happy to do that and to join you all in recognizing Dr. Singh's incredible contribution, not just to education, but also to global engagement. And it's in that context, of course, that I highlight the great association enjoyed between the Pritam and our school, ESCP Business School, a relationship that spanned, in fact, more than 3 decades, making many connections between our campuses in Europe, particularly those in Berlin, London, where I was previously director, and Paris. And he was the very embodiment of the spirit of ambassadorship, leadership, and friendship. And each year it was our great pleasure, and often my own personal pleasure, to welcome Dr. Singh and Dr. Bhandarker and other good friends and colleagues to our venues and homes in Europe. And of course, there were many delegations over a number of years, which I remember very, very fondly indeed. And I'd like to go back very quickly to Professor Kumar's words of a year ago when he said Pritam was not only an erudite academician, but also a great thinker, leader, and institutional builder. He was indeed, and the point's been further made in the last few moments, a true karma yogi who contributed to various aspects of higher education, institutional life, shaping the minds of many organizational leaders and encouraging policies and practices that had a positive impact on our society. And my good friend and colleague at ESCP, Jyoti Gupta, Emeritus Professor of Finance here, and a friend to many of you I know, reminded me that Pritam's great ability amongst many was to bring philosophy and mindfulness into management education. And I think it's a point that many of you echo, that he was particularly skilled as a humanist in reminding us of the importance of the human element to management and leadership, and bringing in Indian philosophical principles in turn. into management education and leadership. And I remember two pearls of wisdom shared with me in various meetings in my office. One was leading with your heart and not just your mind. And the second was that a leader should be a value creator and not purely a value extractor. And it seems to me, whilst I indulge myself here a few minutes and reflect a little bit on different topics, it seems to me that Pritham would be comfortable in many respects with today's discourse within business schools, where the focus is increasingly on the role of corporate social responsibility, corporate social performance, business ethics, and ESG reporting as example, comfortable too with the focus in leadership literature increasingly on empathetic leadership, humble inquiry, and emotionally enabled leadership, and the repopularization of Drucker and the reemergence of the servant leadership concept included. And that really leads me just to reflect very briefly perhaps on a couple of questions linked to our collective endeavor and mission to educate and to contribute to personal and professional development. And the first of those is about our general approach to leadership development. And if I can just contribute a personal view for 2 or 3 minutes more before you move on with your proceedings, I think we should collectively continue to believe in the power of professional education and leadership development to contribute specifically to personal, organizational, and societal progress. And certainly here at ESCP, as the oldest business school in the world, and one rooted in the humanist tradition of management education, our strong faith remains that we can help people, teams, and organizations to think critically about what they can do to deliver positive change and how to go about it. And the pillars of our approach at ESCP include the pillar of contribution, that is making a positive impact. Of course, that begs the question, of course, is what are the key leadership skills executives need to be successful in business? And for certain, leadership requires a broad assortment of skills and aptitudes, as we all know: critical thinking, decision-making, influencing, sense-making, to count just a few. But I personally find myself talking a great deal these days about servant leadership. And it's here where I connect back to dear Pritham and his philosophy of management and leadership. The idea, I think, that we lead in service to a purpose and to those that we represent echoes in many respects the views shared with me and with all of us, no doubt, by Dr. Singh himself, who was in his own way a servant leader, committed to the personal and professional development of everyone on his teams, believing that the organization is best served always by stewarding all involved towards shared goals. And this requires a strong sense of mutual purpose, of co-identification, humility, and empathy, attributes I'm sure we would all associate directly with Pritham. But servant leaders must be agile, resilient, and adaptive. It's not enough to emphasize the better qualities of men and show them how to bring those into leadership as a force for good. We are also faced with preparing global leaders, as you are going to discuss over the course of this conference. We're also faced with preparing global leaders for a volatile, demanding, and unpredictable environment. We must help to develop skills such as anticipation, forecasting, resilience, and agility, alongside those of empathy and engagement. And all in the context, of course, of a sense of understanding of the importance of lifelong learning. We're talking, I guess we were talking pre-pandemic about how our populations are getting older and how our longer lives are taking a different shape with repeated requirements to upskill or up-educate, as I sometimes like to say. Now COVID and digitalization together have changed many people's visions of how they might work or how they might wish to work. They've changed the ways in which many organizations are configured, the ways in which many companies are choosing to operate, and all of this together, add all of this together, and that conversation about lifelong learning takes center stage with the sense that knowledge and skills can become redundant or obsolete so very quickly, and that new ways of working require new points of learning. And these modern workplaces are going to need humanists, they're going to need agile thinkers, they're going to need those that have those attributes that we've been discussing a little bit this evening together. But let me give way there, because you have a very busy program and many voices to be heard this afternoon. But let me just again echo Professor Raj Kumar's thanks to all involved in this event and all involved in the ongoing work of the foundation itself. I'm delighted that ESCP can play a small part in the work of the foundation and a small part in this particular event. Very glad that you are finding time and opportunity to share space and thoughts with colleagues of mine at ESCP, including, of course, Professor David Salah and Professor Peter Stevenson Wright, who are a part of proceedings or the organization behind proceedings. So thank you very much. And I hope you all have a fantastic conference ahead.
Moving on, now let me invite our next patron, Sri Ranjan Mohapatra, Director Human Resources, Indian Oil. Sri Ranjan Kumar Mohapatra is a mechanical engineer from BITS Pilani and a postgraduate in management from Xavier Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar. Sri Mohapatra has over 3 decades of experience in petroleum industry and has handed various assignments in the marketing division of the company, including terminal operations, supply chain management, logistics, and many others. Sri Mohapatra is also the chairman of Indian Oil Mauritius Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary of Indian Oil, LANKA IOCL PLC, subsidiary of Indian Oil in Sri Lanka. He's widely traveled and an affluent speaker. Since he is not able to join us, we have a recorded message from him, and we would like to play that message. Dear team, can you play the message?
Dignitaries and special guests, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Indian Oil. Padma Shri Dr. Pritam Singh has been one of India's great academicians, an educationist par excellence, a true visionary, and an inspirational leadership guru of global stature. With his entrepreneurial vision and path-breaking innovative methods, he has left an indelible mark on the academic world. Over the past several years, he has guided the efforts and the initiatives of several universities and institutions to achieve academic excellence. At Indian Oil, we have been extremely fortunate to gain from Dr. Pritam Singh's touch of Midas over the years through our continued association with him starting in the early 2000s when late Dr. Subir Raha was the Director HR. We benefited from his extraordinary insights as a mentor to various Indian Oil leaders over the years. But his contributions have just not been confined to the mentorship, and his distinctive ethos has touched Indian Oil profoundly. Leveraging his vast experience and expertise in the field of management, he was associated with several transformational leadership initiatives for senior executives at Indian Oil. Dr. Singh had a grounded approach that was strengthened by deep-rooted Indian values tempered with a global outlook. With his deep understanding of Indian scriptures and their modern application, he was adept at helping leaders connect the dots and bridge the gap between thoughts and action, thereby establishing a strong business multiplier. Hence, the theme of this conference aptly captures his legacy in terms of architecting the future of business, leadership, governance, and technology. To illustrate my personal association with Dr. Singh, let me go back to 2017-18 when Indian Oil's flagship Women Leadership Development Program, ROE, was conceptualized and implemented under the guidance of Dr. Pritam Singh. Inspired by Dr. Singh's perspectives, ROE aims to successfully transition women leaders at Indian Oil into senior management roles. His guidance was invaluable in preparing our women by enhancing their professional capabilities and encouraging them to embrace new challenges beyond their comfort zones. Today, as 3 batches of ROEs have been enriched and empowered, we stay deeply grateful to Dr. Singh for strengthening us with a critical mass of women leaders who are creating a vibrant and diverse organization. And today, as I am speaking at this conference that commemorates his exceptional contributions, I feel fortunate and humbled. The topic of the conference is also close to my heart and quite pertinent in these turbulent times. COVID-19 has ushered in immediate, profound and lasting changes at social, organizational and individual levels. We witnessed a tectonic shift in work cultures through remote working, dynamic reallocation of resources and the acceleration of digitalization and automation. With the advent of virtual meetings and offsite working, we literally saw the delayering happen in the organization and governance with technology now assuming enhanced importance. In this virtual work environment that COVID-19 created lay the risk of losing sight of human sentiments. In these situations, Dr. Singh's advice of upholding empathy at all times was my guiding mantra as I had to rally our resources as the Chief People's Officer of Indian Oil. Friends, I am sure that this event will therefore rightly focus on the need of organizations to embed purpose, potential and perspective into the organizational DNA and influence how they operate, especially when the new governance models and technological scenarios are appearing. In our case, when our COVID warriors like delivery personnel and customer attendants were out in the field, we prioritized empathy in all our actions, be it provision of insurance or ex gratia or distribution of PPEs or facilitation through travel, food, shelter or support for families. The diverse aspects of our people strategy, which Dr. Singh has guided from time to time, was extremely helpful to us. I must confess that many lessons from Dr. Singh have helped us in general and during the COVID situation in particular. Driven by his insights, we maintained a sustained focus on business continuity and ensured that no corner of the country was left without fuel despite the lockdown. At Indian Oil, we recognized that ensuring employee well-being has to be an overriding priority while pursuing fuel business growth. The scourge for the pandemic not only affected the physical health quotient, but it also affected the mental and financial well-being of most people. Thus, the onus has been on the leaders to stay alert regarding employee wellness while not losing sight of business objectives. Businesses could bounce back and set the wheels on track majorly through strategic HR interventions and people-centric policies. In the words of global HR expert Josh Berzin, today's HR is a marketeer, sales representative, career coach and psychologist all in one. Dr. Singh's thoughts and beliefs reflected that reality and he championed HR's criticality for nurturing an organizational ecosystem that inspires and guides employees to walk through unknown terrain with confidence and ease. A research report published in the International Journal of Innovative Research and Development has concluded that HR is indispensable to promote a corporate culture that is receptive to sustainable business practices, leading to economic, social, and environmental sustainability. To honor Dr. Singh's principles and the theme of this conference, let me suggest a few principles for the corporate fraternity. I would urge you all to deliberate on these principles with an eye on the future of business, leadership, governance, and technology. Number one, let's not leave any stone unturned to understand the organizational needs. Deep dive into your organization's current and future business and people requirements. Determine which roles and skills are pivotal and are likely to remain critical. This is the most crucial step and requires the buy-in of the top management. Number two, stay focused on strategic workforce planning. Based on your understanding of the organizational needs, create a futuristic and detailed workforce scenario that accounts for myriad factors like market trends, industry regulations, automation, and other technologies. Once the pivotal roles are identified, demographic analysis and success profiles will reveal candidate traits. Companies must deploy succession planning and what-if scenario modeling to objectively choose where to devote precious recruiting, talent development, and deployment resources and budget. Number three, strategies must be aligned with employee needs. The white whales of recruiting skilled millennials are more likely to switch companies than previous generations. The opportunity for career progression tops the list of desirable workplace qualities cited by at least 52% of millennials. Hence, focusing on customized employee development and relevant deployment become critical. Also, concerns for flexibility and work-life balance will continue to rise. Once an employee-centric talent strategy is developed, one should spread it through an employee value propositions EVP to make all universities, stakeholders, key websites, and trade publications aware of it. And the last one, fourth, you must keep your strategies dynamic. The continuous advent of new technologies, uncertainties, globalization will continue to disrupt business challenges. Hence, the organizational strategies must adapt to changing times. Periodic assessments of talent management plans, including recruitment drives, learning and development forays, and a robust succession plan is essential. In a nutshell, nothing should remain static. With these words, let me welcome all the delegates to the conference. I look forward to enriching and vibrant deliberations. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Moving on, it's my privilege to invite the chief guest of today's function, Professor D.P. Singh, to share his inaugural address. A few lines on respected Professor Singh. Professor Singh is the chairman of University Grants Commission, the apex highest education regulatory body in India. Professor Singh has held academic and leadership positions in Indian higher education in a career spanning close to 4 decades. Previously, he led 3 universities as Vice Chancellor, which is Banaras Hindu University, BHU Varanasi, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, Sagar, and Devi Ahilya University, Indore, and headed National Assessment and Accreditation Council, Bangalore, as a director. Professor Singh has been instrumental in developing conducive learning environment, enhancing academic and administrative efficiency, fostering excellence in research, encouraging global facilitation of higher education, and promoting quality and value-based higher education in India. Sir, it's a privilege to have you with us. Over to you.
Namaste. Good evening to you all, and good afternoon to Professor Simon. Honorable President and Trustees of Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, Shri Dwarakanath Patnam ji, former Chairman GSP, Consumer Healthcare Limited, and President Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, Shri S.Y. Siddiqui, Dr. B.A. Maitri, respected Dr. Chaturvedi, Dr. Asha Bhandarker, Professor C. Raj Kumar, Honorable Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University, Professor Simon, Shri Ranjan Mohapatra, all the distinguished friends from the academia and industry. It is my pleasure to be here amongst you all at the inaugural session of first Pritam Singh Memorial Conference on the theme architecting the future of business, leadership, governance, and technology. I feel this is a true tribute to Dr. Pritam Singh, who devoted his entire life working tirelessly in the field of leadership and governance in Indian higher education. My compliments to the organizers, Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation and OP Jindal Global University, for putting this together along with ESCP London, a school with whom Dr. Pritam Singh had a long association in the field of executive education. I am especially happy to know about the establishment of Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation as a registered trust by his friends, followers, and well-wishers. I am informed that the trust has been set up with the objective of taking forward the legacy and life lessons of Dr. Pritam Singh. Friends, COVID-19 has changed the fundamentals of business, and thus leaders need to reflect and act in new ways. Leaders and organizations who have been unable to plan well have witnessed potentially disastrous consequences. The need of the hour is a leadership focusing on speed, compassion, empathy, and resilience, which in turn will determine the chances of sustainability and survival of the organizations. The present COVID-19 pandemic has also had businesses witness countless employee considerations, and thus need a new perspective of leadership to deal with them effectively. A critical dimension of leadership in present times is also to take care of the socio-economic well-being of employees in order to curb mental stress. The present crisis requires employees to respond effectively and quickly to challenges and opportunities, and this is possible only when the employees are empowered. The present pandemic has made the task of designing strategies that effectively address both business and employee concerns a big challenge for leaders. Businesses and leaders today are preparing for never normal, a new age which will be characterized by rapidly evolving cultural standards, social values and attitudes, such as increased demand for good corporate governance and enhanced brand intent. No wonder leadership and governance is all the more important in present times, and it plays a pivotal role in determining the future of the organization. The other speakers have talked about Dr. Pritam Singh and his manifold contributions in Indian higher education. I also take this opportunity to highlight my association with him and his contributions in the Indian higher education. Friends, as you are aware, not only was he the first Padma Shri recipient as a serving B school director and professor, he has also been member of several government committees. The most recent one being the Empowered Expert Committee on Institutions of Eminence. In this committee, I had the opportunity to observe him closely, and each interaction with him left the committee members wiser and more enlightened. It was evident that he knew the Indian higher education system as the back of his palm and immensely helped to get the project off the ground. My acquaintance with Dr. Pritam Singh has been for more than a decade. First time, I had an opportunity to meet him at BHU, where I have worked as the Vice Chancellor during 2008-2011. Since he was one of the most illustrious alumni of BHU, I had the privilege to invite him in some committees as member and also in some important functions. I have been always benefited from his wisdom and insights. And what was always remarkable was his simplicity, his disarming smile, and more importantly, his willingness to help everyone. The post and designations could never make an impact on him. And I am sure that many of you present here can vouch for the same. Friends, on this occasion, I am also happy to share that in the changing times, UGC is not behind, and in order to fructify the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister to make India the knowledge superpower, is committed to make National Education Policy 2020 in motion in the coming years. The NEP is a unique amalgamation of the ancient cultural values and the modern knowledge and science. Some of the activities related to the NEP 2020 have already commenced from the current academic year, and arrangements are being made to ensure that the policy gets implemented in the entire country from the next academic session. The NEP will not only connect students with their cultural roots, but will also inspire them to become the world's best citizens. Kindly allow me to speak some of the notable reforms and changes introduced by the UGC during the recent years. Because Dr. Pritam Singh used to ask me again and again what new reforms, what new initiatives UGC is taking, and he has guided me a lot. The UGC has launched quality mandate with 5 objectives and 10 verticals to improve overall quality in higher education. He was very conscious about the quality of higher education. He always guided me for good governance and how good vice chancellors should be in place in the universities. These initiatives were learner-centric, faculty-centric, and institution-focused. All the initiatives like Jeevan Kaushal, life skills, inculcation of human values and professional ethics, which was very near and dear to Dr. Pritam Singh. Satat for developing eco-friendly and sustainable campus, student induction program Diksharam, Stride, Care, faculty induction program Gurdakshta, Paramarsh. They are all available in the form of guidelines and frameworks as e-books on UGC website. The UGC has notified regulations for the Academic Bank of Credits in view of National Education Policy. It provides flexibility of curriculum framework and academic mobility to students across higher education institutions with appropriate credit transfer mechanisms. Guidelines on internationalization of higher education has also been brought out by UGC for encouraging our higher education institutions to engage in collaborative research and academic activities at the international level and brand themselves as international study destinations. UGC guidelines for multiple entry and exit has been launched by Honorable Prime Minister recently, which facilitates students in choosing their learning trajectory and the courses they wish to opt for. For increasing employability and strengthening industry-academia linkage, the UGC has framed guidelines for higher education institutions to offer apprenticeship and internship embedded degree program. Keeping in mind the crisis of COVID-19 and in accordance with the NEP 2020, UGC has framed regulations for promoting online ODL and blended mode of learning. UGC has amended regulations related to SWAYAM. Now the higher education institutions are allowed to teach up to 40% of any course online, and the rest 60% can be taught offline. UGC, as a national coordinator for non-technology PG MOOCs for SWAYAM, developed 145 MOOCs and delivered 208 MOOCs on the SWAYAM platform. Till now, 150 universities, including 27 central universities, have come on board for accepting credit transfer for courses offered through SWAYAM platform. More universities are likely to join in future. UGC has also amended its regulation for institutions of eminence and included a clause allowing offshore campuses for all selected IOE institutes. साथियों, आप सभी ने अभी डॉक्टर प्रीतम सिंह जी के बारे में चर्चा करते हुए अलग अलग शब्दों में कुछ बातें कही हैं और ये भी कहा गया कि वो एक he was a unique academician, exemplar प्रोफेसर, और बार बार वो भगवत गीता की बात करते थे, चलते फिरते भी बात करते थे भगवत गीता की. एंड आई फॉन्डली रिमेम्बर, और मुझे आज वही मैं कहना चाहता हूँ उनको याद करते हुए कि भगवत गीता में कहा गया है कि शरीर नश्वर है, आत्मा अजर अमर है. हम ये मानते हैं कि उनकी पवित्र आत्मा, उनकी शांतिपूर्ण आत्मा कहीं न कहीं विराजमान है किसी न किसी रूप में, और जिस तरह से आत्मा शरीर छोड़ करके दूसरा शरीर ग्रहण करती है, जाती है, उसी तरह से वो हमारे बीच में किसी न किसी रूप में विद्यमान है. व्यक्ति अपने कार्य से, अपने आचरण से, अपने व्यवहार से, अपने संबंधों से याद किया जाता है. मुझे बहुत खुशी है कि डॉक्टर प्रीतम सिंह याद में ये फाउंडेशन आपके द्वारा बनाई गई है. आज का जो जगत है, जिसे हम लौकिक जगत कहते हैं, उसमें लोग बहुत जल्दी भुला देते हैं अपने सगे संबंधियों को, लोगों के किए हुए कार्यों को. लेकिन एक एकेडमिशियन को, ऐसे अच्छे श्रेष्ठ व्यक्ति को इस तरह से याद करना, ये मुझे लगता है कि एक एग्जाम्पल है अपने आप में. और इसके लिए मेरे पास शब्द नहीं है आप सबको धन्यवाद देने के लिए और बधाई देने के लिए. मैं तो आपसे यही अपेक्षा करूंगा कि श्री द्वारकानाथ जी ने उनके लिए अजात शत्रु का प्रयोग किया. मैंने पाया है कि मैंने जहां जहां भी उनको देखा है, जहां जहां भी उनके बारे में चर्चा हुई है, अभी कुछ दिन पहले प्रोफेसर चतुर्वेदी साहब, हरवंश चतुर्वेदी जी, आशा मैडम और इमरान मैत्री जी मुझसे मिले थे, और उनके बारे में याद करते हुए, उनकी चर्चा करते हुए, उनके चेहरे पर जो भाव थे, वो उनसे जो आत्मीयता रही है, उनसे जो भावात्मक संबंध रहा है, वह दर्शाता है. मुझे लगता है कि व्यक्ति का अपना सोच, अपना कार्य व्यवहार और उनके आपस के संबंध, यही आज हमारे माध्यम से जो कुछ हो रहा है वो करा रहे हैं. मैं आज के इस अवसर पर उनका पुण्य स्मरण करता हूँ. उन्हें अपनी ओर से और यूजीसी की ओर से, शिक्षा जगत की ओर से विनम्र श्रद्धांजलि देता हूँ. मेरी तो आपसे ये अपेक्षा होगी, और जो भी लोग उनसे जुड़े हुए हैं, कि हम सैकड़ों प्रीतम सिंह पैदा करें. उनका ज्ञान, उनकी शिक्षा, उनकी दीक्षा, उनका वैल्यू सिस्टम इंटैक्ट रहे. उनका लीडरशिप और गवर्नेंस से रिलेटेड जो भी ज्ञान है वह हम लोगों में बांटें, और ऐसे सैकड़ों लोग तैयार हों जो कि उसको, ज्ञान को और उनकी शिक्षा को आगे बढ़ाएं, और वास्तव में हमारे शिक्षक गुरु बनने की कोशिश करें. शिक्षक और गुरु में अंतर होता है. शिक्षक केवल शिक्षक की कार्य करता है, और मुझे लगता है शिक्षा उससे कहीं आगे है, और इसलिए हमें गुरु बनने की जरूरत है. गुरु वह है जो कि अपने विद्यार्थियों से अनुराग करता है, प्रेम करता है, विद्यार्थियों से को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए, उनको जीवन संग्राम में आगे बढ़ने के लिए तैयार करता है. उसके अंदर गुरुत्व होता है, उसके अंदर गुरुत्वाकर्षण होता है. ऐसा ही गुरुत्व और गुरुत्वाकर्षण मैंने प्रोफेसर प्रीतम सिंह में पाया. उनके साथ कई जगह मुझे जाने का भी मौका मिला, और मैं त्रिची IIM में एक वाइस चांसलर कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई थी, उसमें 2 दिन उनके साथ था. उसके बाद प्रोफेसर हरवंश चतुर्वेदी साहब जो भी कार्यक्रम करते रहे, उनमें मैं उनके साथ रहा. यूजीसी में बार बार उनकी विजिट्स हुई, और इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ इमिनेंस, क्योंकि प्रोफेसर राज कुमार जी यहाँ पे हैं, उनका इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ इमिनेंस है, उसमें उनका योगदान बहुत ही हमेशा रहा और बहुत ही सराहनीय रहा, हमेशा याद किया जाएगा. तो मैं बहुत शिद्दत के साथ उन्हें याद करता हूँ. लग रहा है कि वो मेरे सामने जैसे अभी हों, कैप पहने हुए, मुस्कुराते हुए, और मुझे कुछ अच्छा करने के लिए प्रेरित कर रहे हों। यही प्रेरणा मुझे आगे कार्य करने के लिए बनी रहे, ऐसी मैं आज ईश्वर से कामना करता हूं और आप सबको धन्यवाद देता हूं और फाउंडेशन को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। ये फाउंडेशन खूब आगे बढ़े, यूजीसी अपने स्तर पर जो कुछ भी उनकी याद में कर सकेगा करने की कोशिश करेगा और व्यक्तिगत रूप से मैं जो भी मेरे से संभव हो सकेगा वो करने की कोशिश करूंगा। आप सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Friends, we will now play a small video as a tribute to Dr. Singh. I request the admin to play the video.
The world would be ruled and dominated not by the weapons. Globe would be dominated by the power of the mind.
Born on 19th November 1941 in Benares, India, Dr. Pritam Singh has left his indelible mark in the field of higher education, not only in India, but globally. A transformational leader and an institution builder, he is revered as the turnaround man of Indian management education. Dr. Pritam Singh's life is a celebration of social impact created particularly through education. He was a visionary leader who contributed to various aspects of higher education, institution building, and nation building. Dr. Singh had always been passionate about Indian wisdom and philosophy, which he sought to disseminate on global platforms. He played an instrumental role in paving a vision of our nation by shaping the minds of leadership of organizations and enabling policies that had a positive impact on our society. Dr. Pritam Singh finished his M.Com with flying colours from the Benares Hindu University and went on to receive his PhD in management from the same university. He served as a Fulbright Fellow at the Kelley School of Management in USA. A born academic and a true teacher to the core of his heart, Dr. Singh discovered his call early when he joined the faculty at XLRI Jamshedpur. He believed in building a holistic management school around the pillars of teaching, training, research, and consulting. Dr. Singh spearheaded XLRI's executive development programs and conducted a number of these with Coal India Limited and TISCO, as Tata Steel was then known. Those were early days, and when executive development was still nascent. A visionary, he understood the unstated need of the industry. Over the years, he worked with more than 200 CEOs in India and abroad and led countless development programs and outbound retreats for them from XLRI. He gave importance to all stakeholders of a management school and based on that principle showed that no management school can achieve greatness unless it met the needs of various stakeholders. Dr. Pritham went on to become the Dean at the Administrative Staff College, Hyderabad, and then IIM, Bangalore. Later, he was appointed as the Director at MDI Gurgaon, IIM Lucknow, and then IMI Delhi. Wherever he went, he broke the glass ceiling and opened up new vistas with his entrepreneurial vision and path-breaking, innovative methods. He was a firm believer that knowledge was not only to be created, but it had to be disseminated and applied in order to make a difference to organizations, communities, and society. He turned around the fortunes of many of these institutions and was soon reckoned as the director with the Midas touch. According to him, balance is the key to manage self and teams. He demonstrated tremendous capacity to connect horizon with ground. A thought leader with extraordinary insight, Dr. Singh authored 7 academically reputed books, 3 of which are award-winning. He also published over 60 research papers in various national and international journals. A globally sought-after speaker, he addressed various Indian and global audiences, including the chambers of commerce in various countries, notably Holland, France, Germany, Greece, Russia, UK, USA, Thailand, Mauritius, Egypt, and others. Dr. Singh was the member and chairperson of many important committees of the Indian government, including the Prime Minister's Empowered Committee for Selection of Eminence Institutions of India, set up in 2017. In 2003, in recognition of his distinguished contribution as an educationist, he was conferred with the prestigious Padma Shri Award. In December 2006, Mirbis, the leading management school in Moscow, honored him as the 19th Global Thought Leader 2006-2007. He was not just the first Indian, but the first Asian to have walked in this global hall of fame. In his career spanning half a century, Dr. Pritam Singh has been a guru and a mentor to corporate India. His mantra as a leader was performance excellence. His inclusivity is legendary, as he did not differentiate between people on the basis of various divisive factors. Dr. Pritham always strived to be a good role model for people and held himself up to the same high standards that he had for his colleagues. Besides that, he had an innate liking for people and treated them with great respect and regard. He took pleasure in mentoring people, and his humor helped diffuse many a tense situation. A prolific speaker and author, and an inspirational role model for many. But what he is known mostly for is his tireless endeavor to raise the bar of excellence in institutions and organizations through his charismatic as well as hands-on leadership.
Distinguished colleagues, we are coming to the closer of the inaugural session. I now request Professor Chaturvedi to propose the vote of thanks. Professor Chaturvedi, as we all know him, is the director of Birla Institute of Management Technology, India. And he is alternate president for Education Promotion Society of India, EPSI. He has more than 45 years of experience in teaching and research and academic administration. He's been the director of All India Council for Technical Education, a statutory body under the Government of India. Professor Chaturvedi, may I request you to propose?
Respected Chief Guest, Dr. D.P. Singh, Mr. P. Dwarakanath, President, Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, Dr. C. Raj Kumar, Vice Chancellor, Jindal Global University, Dr. Simon Mercado, Dean ESCP, Mr. Ranjan Mohapatra, Dr. Asha Bhandarker, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is my proud privilege to present the vote of thanks to all dignitaries who have graced the inaugural session and addressed the participants of the first Dr. Pritam Singh Memorial Conference. Let me first of all express our sincere gratitude to the chief guest, Dr. D.P. Singh, Chairman UGC, who has found time for this inaugural session. Dr. D.P. Singh has earned vast experience in Indian higher education at all levels, and he has seen the higher education of India from all angles. Despite his busy schedule and pressing engagements in connection with the implementation of NEP 2020, Dr. D.P. Singh was kind enough to give his consent for this inaugural session. His relationship with Dr. Pritam Singh has been very cordial since he has been the Vice Chancellor of BHU during 2008 to 11, which was also the alma mater of Dr. Pritam Singh. Later, because of Dr. Dr. Pritam Singh's active involvement with the Empowered Expert Committee constituted by the Ministry of Education for identifying institutions of eminence, he became closer to him. One thing I find very common between late Dr. Pritam Singh and our chief guest, Dr. DP Singh, both demonstrate utmost humility, but their lives have been an example to rise from very humble background. Both of them have been born in a farmer's family, and they have reached to the highest level in higher education in our country. Thank you, Dr. DP Singh, for gracing the inaugural session of PRISM as its chief guest and delivering a thoughtful address. As you know, that PRISM 2021 has been organized by Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation in partnership with OP Jindal Global University and ESCP Business School, Paris. OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat, is very young private university, but it has achieved several laurels, including the prestigious status of Institute of Eminence in India. Its founder, Vice Chancellor, Dr. C. Raj Kumar, is one of the patrons of this conference. Under his leadership, the Jindal School of Banking and Finance team has worked very hard to make the conference successful. I thank Dr. C. Raj Kumar for lending his valuable support to this conference and delivering a thought-provoking address. Professor Dr. Simon Mercado, Dean, ESCP, who has been redesignated as Vice President, Senior Vice President of ESCP Paris, is another patron on behalf of the ESCP group. He has also addressed this inaugural session. We are thankful to him for joining today and reiterating the long association of ESCP group of business schools with Dr. Pritam Singh. Dr. Ranjan Kumar Mohapatra, Director HR IOC, although could not join today because of some compulsion, but he has addressed by a recorded video. He is a stalwart of HR profession in India, and I would like to thank him also for sparing time to record his video message. Many academicians and industry professionals have been part of inaugural session. I hope that they will be actively participation in next 2 days proceedings also. I thank all of them for the support of this conference. My special thanks to Mr. P. Dwarakanath for leading us, for taking a giant step for organizing this big conference. He has been famous in the corporate world for his leadership, but now he is demonstrating and showing this kind of leadership to this organization, Dr. Pritam Singh Foundation, to greater heights. Let me also thank Dr. Asha Bhandarker, who is the director of this conference and who is the main architect to give an academic shape to the whole idea of the theme of this conference, which is architecting the future of business, leadership, governance, and technology. Once again, I thank all of you for joining this inaugural session. We shall continue the proceedings tomorrow and day after tomorrow. The tomorrow proceedings will be virtually available by connecting through the common web link. And day after tomorrow, we shall be meeting in a physical format at India International at 9:30 a.m. sharp to celebrate the birthday of Dr. Pritam Singh, as well as some more sessions of this conference. Thank you.